Hi, Eric Foley with part 2 of our Transformational Giving series on databases. Let me read you something really quick from a book called Winning Gifts by Thomas D. Wilson. And I'm not reading this to you because I like it. Your real task in fundraising is to get the wealthy, already interested people even more interested and engaged with you, and to get the wealthy, uninterested people intrigued and enamored of your organization. I'm not really picking on Thomas Wilson or that book particularly. What I want to suggest, though, is that that kind of mindset thinking about fundraising is what makes you and I not like it at all, because it's not what God has in mind for our nonprofit organizations. As we talk about building a database that matches God's purposes, we need to understand that that database has to be primarily geared towards discipleship, not dollars. As we'll be talking about later on in this series, keeping track of giving is a really important part of any database, but it's not the only part and it's not the main part. I want to give you a big idea to think about, and that's this. If your data does not match God's data, then your purposes can't match God's purposes. As a result of that, how you develop your database and what data you track will determine whether what your nonprofit does is meeting what God needs it to do or not. So building a database becomes the most crucial choice that you will make as a nonprofit organization. Here's the rub. You've already got a database. The good news about what we're teaching in this Transformational Giving database series is you don't have to start over from scratch. It doesn't matter whether you're using Excel or Razor's Edge or Contera or anything. By learning to track the kind of data that God tracks, and by learning how to be able to share it with champions so that they track it together with you, you can achieve transformation. That word transformation is kind of a squirrely word. It is one of those words that people use to mean some kind of an emotional exuberance, happiness, something that is really hard to track. So I want to give you a very specific definition of transformation that will be helpful as you develop a transformational giving database. It comes from pollster George Barna. And of course he had to come up with a very specific way of identifying whether someone who experienced transformation or not. And this is how he defined transformation. He says that it is any significant and lasting transition in your life where you switch from one substantial perspective or practice to something wholly different. So in other words, when we say that your database is designed to track transformation, we're saying that what it needs to track is any substantial lasting experience in your champion's life related to the cause that you and they both share that gives them a wholly different perspective or that changes their practice. That's why we're tracking something more than and different than giving. It's possible for someone to write you a check and not have it wholly change their perspective. It's possible to have someone sign up for a newsletter and not have it change their perspective. Those may or may not be transformational moments. What we need to track is what we call transformational data. So transformational data is simply the record of any significant life change or event related to the cause. When we build the Transformational Giving database, then, we're going to be using financial information, financial giving data, but we're also going to be tracking how it is that the champion moved from knowing very little to nothing, or are being involved in very insignificant ways, to knowing a lot and being involved in a lot in your cause. That's what needs to be in your database. And the question we need to ask is, okay, how do I find out what those transformational moments are for my champions? And if I've got a database of 7,000 records or 700,000 records, where do I start? That's what we're going to cover in part 3 of the series, Transformational Giving Databases.